So it is noon again. Welcome, everyone. Glad you are all here. We're looking forward to an engaging conversation today about searching for our next pastor. We know that many of our churches are in transition. So we hope you will find this helpful in marketing your job description, your opening, maybe even like nationwide. Uh, Facilitating today is Amy D. She is a ruling elder at our Valley Presbyterian Church up here in Portland, and they just completed an extensive search and are delighted to have welcomed their new pastor. Amy learned a lot in the process. She put together an amazing document of feedback of things that were stumbling blocks, but things that worked for them. You will find that in a resource folder that we have put together for you. But yeah, Amy's feedback document is in there. I would highly encourage you to utilize it. There's also another document in there because you're going to probably hear a lot of acronyms being thrown around today. PNC search vocabulary or PNC vocabulary. Make good use of that if there's something that you hear that you don't know. We're also going to hear from Robin Garvin today, one of our expert interim pastors working throughout the Presbytery. Happy to have her here. And then we will also hear from Brian Craker at some point, our transitional executive, and he's going to talk about our communion partners. What the heck does that mean? Brian, I'll let you know. But at this point, I will bow out and turn it over to Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks to everyone for coming this afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to share a little bit with you about our process. So in my part of this, I'm going to touch on just a few things. First of all, I will share with you about how we use the document called On Calling a Pastor. I will talk to you about the CLC, which is the Church Leadership Connection site. Talk a little bit about advertising, and I'll touch on networking because I know Robin's going to spend some time on that. And then the importance of your own church website. And so with that, let me tell you that on Sunday, this just past Sunday, exactly a year ago, Susan, our new pastor, reminded us that it was 1 year ago that a scared young pastor arrived at Valley and preached for the first time, and then the congregation voted to concur with the PNC as our first choice hire. And I will tell you that I do believe it was a brilliant hire. It has been a wonderful, wonderful year. And even though it has been a year, I think you will find that what I share with you will still be of some value. So to begin, that document that I mentioned on calling a pastor, that's available on our Presbytery website, but Sherry will also put it in the resource folder. I think that's a document that every PNC and church needs to look at first and foremost. It gives you the big picture idea of the process, but I want you to look at it with the knowledge that it is a guide, not necessarily a strict rule book, because things have changed. We have access to technology now, so but it is important, and it has some terrific graphics, and it's the best way to start. Now let me move into that CLC. It stands for that the Church Leadership Connection site. And the best way I can explain that for those of you who are not familiar is that it is a sort of repository where seeking pastors will put their files, and then churches that have open positions will put their MDP. So you've got the PDP and the MDP on the CLC. This is where you might want to make use of that document that Sherry will make available to you. And then not only is it a kind of a repository, but it is also programmed to make matches between that MDP from your church and the Seeking Pastors PDP. How that works, is a little bit of a mystery to me. And I'll talk to you about that in just a minute. But I do know that it is the first place that pastors look who are actively seeking for a new position. Um, because we did this a year ago, we were one of the very first churches to use it. And at that time, the system was a little bit clunky still, but very valuable. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that it isn't something tremendously worthwhile. I think the biggest difficulty we had was our confusion surrounding the competency piece. And that has been clarified some on the website and within the videos that you're all going to want to take a look at. But we found that we would have had more matches that we could sort through if those competencies had been different. And I wish there was a workaround. We did invite someone from the CLC to come to this meeting, and I'm not sure that she is attending or not. No, Sherry. Um, but maybe that's a possibility down the road that we can actually look at every MDP that is in there, not just those that matched. And so we found ourselves finding ways to manipulate that system. And one of the ways that we manipulated the system was to change our demographic of who we were looking for, meaning this. We broadened the experience we desired. We were really looking for someone with about 8 to 10 years of experience, because this was going to be a solo pastor position. But when we dropped that down to this being a first call, it opened up all kinds of, of matches. Now, I don't want that to scare you, because there are people who are career changers. I personally know of someone who spent years in the finance industry and then went back to school. And went back to seminary. That's a good person who has the kind of experience that we wanted, but would not have shown up if we had just stuck with that, I think, the 5 to 10 year category. So if anyone has comments at the end about how we can actually manipulate that system a bit more, I would love to hear that. And I believe that's important, because the human element always outweighs any kind of algorithm, if you ask me. And the more people we can look at, just the greater number of potential applicants we end up having. So because seeking pastors use the CLC, when they read the MDP, which is about your church, they go directly to the church website. And so it's critical that your website is up to date and it reflects your church and your congregation, your core values, and your mission statement. It absolutely must do that. It's got to reflect who you are now and who you're called to be, because that MDP on the CLC only allows you 1,500 characters per prompt. So you're not going to be able to get to all of your wonderful programs and how great your music is and all of that in those prompts. You're going to have a very up-to-date church website. The other reason that church website is critically important is because of the demographic of the pastors that we actually saw coming our way. They're looking at that platform first. They want to see who you are, and they'll listen to some sermons that are posted. That's important. We did get people who looked at our website first, but who did not have a PDP on the CLC site. We had put our PNC specific email on our website, and they used that. When that happened, if we were interested, we directed them directly to the CLC and told them to get something up there. It wasn't a real problem for us, because by that time we had already really zeroed in on Pastor Susan Tyndall, and we knew she was our number one candidate, but we're still getting, people that were trickling in. And prior to this meeting, I did talk extensively with Susan, and I asked her specifically, as a pastor who's had maybe 10 years of experience, where did she look when she knew she wanted to make a move? And her first comment was, I looked on the CLC. She says, I also did some networking, and Robin's going to talk more about networking in just a few minutes. But I asked her, did you look in any online or print publications for job openings? And her response was no. Then I asked her, how about any other pastors in your cohort? Are they looking at these publications? And she said, I kind of don't think so. And then again, maybe that is a cohort or demographic sort of thing, or not. I have no idea. But they do network and they go to the CLC. So we found that to be very, very helpful. And at this time, I also want just to comment that there are wonderful videos on how to use the CLC, and Sherry will have those in the folder that you will all get. So, make use of those. They're important. In addition, there is this wonderful woman by the name of Ava, who's not here, and I believe she's in Kentucky. Is that right, Sherry? Yeah, she's in Kentucky, and she was the person that we would contact when we had specific questions about that CLC, and she was excellent about either calling back or answering an email right away. So make use of her if you have specific questions about that whole electronic platform. So again, when it came to advertising, we considered all the places where we could put print advertising, whether it was online or, they were hard copies. And we were ready, but we were able to put that kind of on the back burner because a couple of them, as I recall, were very expensive. And we were operating within a budget that was somewhat limited. So we did put that on the back burner. Those that you might consider would be Presbyterians Today, Presbyterian Outlook, Christian Century. And During the question and answer period, after Brian's finished, it would be helpful if anyone can speak to that kind of advertising or that sort of outreach. And then very quickly, before we move to Robin, I'm going to tell you that the networking piece was important. And while we didn't find someone through networking, we did make very good connections. Robin gave me names of pastors that she knew throughout the presbytery. And I personally, as the chair, sent them emails telling them about our opening and asking them if they or if someone they knew were interested. And I learned very quickly that these are busy people. And so maybe 3 responded to me. But then Robin also gave me the names of some people that she had worked with, either in seminary, took courses that she taught, people that she had mentored. And a couple of them were of great interest to us, but the timing just wasn't right for them, which is why they didn't have something on the CLC. And then finally, I will tell you that we knew of pastors that have preached at Valley over the course of the last several years. And we also reached out to them and asked if they would be interested in our position. 2 of which I was personally very interested in, but alas, I could not convince them, but it is a good idea to reach out to those And so in summary, I'll say for us, it was the CLC and networking that was most effective. And so now I'll ask Robin to fill in and specifically talk about networking. And then Robin, I have a few questions for you.
Okay. I'm on my iPad today, so I have to scroll down a little bit and scurry there. Hello, friends. Good to see everyone today. I am currently in Atlanta on Grammy duty. My second grandchild is on the way. So anyway, I'm on my iPad rather than my computer today. Great to talk with all of you about this really important subject. And I will just quickly speak to some encouragements that I would offer in terms of your search process. Amy's been absolutely spot on in her comments, but I think I would just underscore making sure that your website is up to date and reflective of future, your forward movement, what the next chapter will hold. I think it's good to have a dedicated page, for your PNC and their process. that's logically laid out. And, maybe Amy can speak to it, because I thought ours was really well done, and you could speak to that perhaps later. But I think also having a good social media presence is really an important thing as well, that it looks and feels current and up to date. I also think that before you undertake a search, what's going to make it much easier for you is being very faithful to your transitional process, which in the best of worlds, you've considered well, the three basic questions of the transition period. Who are we as a congregation now? Not who were we 20 years ago, but who are we now? And what are our unique constellation of gifts and assets and strengths and so forth? Second question, of course, who's our neighbor now? In a real good, strong sense of your community, however you define that, your missional community, and their particular needs, which, boy, isn't that a changing profile in the last several months, but being very well aware of that and able to articulate how your mission efforts are being directed toward your particular vineyard, your particular mission field. And thirdly, the third question of, having thought through what is it that God is uniquely calling us to with that constellation of gifts in the particular place where we're planted? What is God calling us to put the best of ourselves, our prioritized energy into in this next season? So if you've done that work, either with a transitional pastor or consultant, or just internally, you've gone through a book together with your session, something along that line, you can be that much sharper about the kind of candidate that you're looking for, the unique gifts, strengths, experiences that a pastor could bring to your situation that would mesh well with your direction going into the future. So I really want to make a pitch for that, being as clear and sharp as you can be about who we are and what kind of pastor not is going to come and do it all for us, but is going to join us in ministry and be uniquely qualified to match up well with our forward direction. Okay. In addition to that, echoing many of the things that Amy has said, I really think the importance of networking. I think you could start locally, and identify some pastors either in your regional area or throughout the presbytery. What I did was I identified some people that were within 5 to 10 years out of seminary and made some phone calls. I find that to be a fruitful way to go. And just I told them, okay, this is the kind of constellation of gifts and so forth that we're looking for in the next pastoral leader. Do you have anybody in your seminary cohort of friends, or someone you've worked with in another presbytery that you think, maybe would match up well? Oftentimes what I would do is ask them, would you be willing to contact them and see if they'd be open to a contact, that sort of thing. And that was actually quite fruitful. Word of mouth, really is still, I think, the most powerful tool that we have. I also would put a quick plug in for something you don't think about necessarily, but if you or your pastoral leader currently is going to a conference, such as like a Matthew 25. In the midst of our search process, I went to a Matthew 25 conference and was able to network there, both formally and informally, and talk with people about the possibility of a move to a Matthew 25 congregation. So you may want to have those distinctives in your hip pocket as you talk with people. Other possibilities, in addition to like a Matthew 25 or another denominational conference, might be something like the Festival of Homiletics, which is a festival of preaching that occurs each year annually at a different geographical location. But that is a treasure trove over several days of possibilities, like if your pastor is going there, or if you as a pastor are going there, or even as a layperson going there. I mean, it would be a great place to go and network. I think that's all I want to say for now. Just really to underscore that I think Amy said it well, and all that I'm adding, I think, is just a little amplification.
Okay, thanks, Robin. Now, I'm going to say this, I don't want to embarrass you, but Allie was fortunate in that we had a transitional pastor in Robin who was very skilled, and she knew how to support us, how to help us, and she also had she has great contacts. Now, let's just say if there's anyone on this screen who is in a very different position and they are on a PNC, how would they go about contacting seminaries, or what suggestions do you have for them on networking as a member of a PNC rather than as a transitional pastor?
Yeah. Well, in terms of contacting seminaries and so forth, most of the seminaries have like a placement office, where they're attempting to help students make connections. And I think I would start with our Presbyterian institutions, but I would certainly broaden. And I think maybe Brian's going to talk a little bit about some of our ministry partners that are beyond the Presbyterian Church, and some fruitful ways that you might approach placement offices at some of those seminaries. I think too that utilizing your commission on ministry liaison, possibly that person, if he or she themselves couldn't help you, possibly could just float some questions that you have, or any contacts that people on your regional COM might have to offer. That's one way. But I don't, as a pastor, now retired, but I mean, when I was in active service, I would get contacts from PNCs all the time, about would you, or do you know someone who'd be interested? So, I mean, targeting some pastors in our Presbyterian is, Amy was saying, send an email, pick up the phone, that sort of thing. In terms of beyond our presbytery, I mean, again, I don't see any problem with picking up the phone and calling presbytery leadership. I would think of it as concentric circles. Geographically, I would start with presbyteries that are in close proximity to us, and just take your program calendar and you can figure that out. And or talk with, presbytery staff and or COM individuals. They could help you with that. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're a connectional church. Let's be connectional. If somebody were to ask me, would you mind reaching out to contacts, young people that you've mentored through my teaching through the years and that sort of thing, I'd be happy to do that. Especially if you share with me clearly what you're looking for. I may know of someone or several someones that are fantastic, that might be at least worth an ask. Are you looking, or open to considering another call?
Perfect. And then my other question for you is, what specific advice are you giving Medford? I know you're working with them right now.
Yeah.
So anything that you're telling them that would benefit the rest of us?
Yeah. Well, it's not magic. I mean, really, it's pretty nuts and bolts. I'm really encouraging them to update their websites. I am trying to move them through the three basic questions and helping them to sharpen, their clarity around the uniqueness of their situation in terms of their gifts and assets. And they have many, they have not, the least of which is their downtown location is a great asset, but also really wanting them to get beyond just generic, we just need somebody to come fill the pulpit. No, I mean, what is it that the next chapter holds? Be sharp about that, work the process. They actually have taken like gangbusters to the second question of who is our neighbor now. And actually, I coached them just a little bit to begin to make a list of community influencers or community leaders, and just to go and ask a simple question. What do you see as the most pressing emerging needs in our community in the next 1 to 3 years? And they got so pumped by that and came up with, it didn't hurt that we had a former state legislator and the former mayor of Medford on this transition team. But anyway, they made a great list and are in the process of working that list with community leaders and becoming sharper and sharper on missional focus. So those are a few things that I'm saying to them.
Okay, great. And then my final comment before we move on to Brian is this. Because you were at Valley as a transitional pastor, and because of your skill, our PNC was able to talk about those things that you just mentioned. And that is, we were able to reflect on that time of self-study and self-reflection. We knew about the mission study and what was occurring during that time. We were excited about it. And therefore, every person on that PNC could articulate who we are, who God's calling us to be next, who's our neighbor. Those very questions you just asked, we could answer based on that mission study and that time of transition. And I think that's critical because, everybody here is going to interview someone, right? If you're on a PNC, you'll be interviewing and those questions will come up. And so remember that those are important points.
May I say too, Amy, while you're on that topic, and just a quick comment. I don't think any of us want to be Pollyannish or unrealistic. We know that there are so many stresses and strains confronting our congregations within our presbytery, financially, diminished numbers of persons engaged in the life of the church, those sorts of things. And it's tempting, isn't it, to want to rush from the conclusion of one pastoral leader to the next without really doing justice to a self-study. I just urge you, don't shortcut that. Don't shortchange that. Even if COM in your region says, well, that's good enough. Make it your business to make it not just good enough, but really a good, thorough self-study process that doesn't have to be, that you're at it for months and months and months, but it does need to be a good faith effort that not only looks at those three questions, but also with wide-eyed realism looks at emerging culture and how it is rapidly changing and how our position in culture is radically different than, it was even 5 years ago. So it's really important, I think, to do that work and to do it well.
Well said, Robin. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Brian.
Good afternoon, friends. How are you all? Good to see you all. So some of the stuff that I was going to be talking about, both Amy and Robin have already touched on a little bit, and so I'll kind of glance over those pieces. I'll add a little bit extra, just so that you all are aware. My position now is the transitional executive presbyter for the Presbytery of the Cascades, but before that, I served for 16 years as an interim pastor at 10 different churches in this presbytery. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I love working with churches in transition and being a part of that search process. One thing that was not on my list to talk about, but because Robin touched on it, and I just want to really stress the importance of this, that self-study is critical, not just for your church, but if you don't do that self-study and that PNC does not understand the ins and outs of that self-study, when great candidates start asking really deep questions, if you did your self-study and did it well, you're going to give them genuine answers. And I promise you, you're going to lose out on quality candidates if you don't know the answers to those questions. And those questions or those answers only come through that self-study. So as Pastor Robin said, do not shortcut that process. Take your time, make sure you know who you are, because you're searching for a leader for your church family. And every family is a little bit different. And so if you don't understand your family, you're not going to be able to sell it when you're having these conversations with these great candidates. So some of the things that have already come up a little bit is in the social media piece, and then we're going to get into print advertising. I've got a long piece that I'm going to put here. But one of the things that was talked about before was making sure that you have your website up and refreshed and up to date. Amy stressed about that. Then Robin got on the fact of how to make sure that you've got those posts. What we don't always recognize, what churches don't always recognize, is how powerful social media is as far as advertising and getting the word of mouth out about your churches. The CLC system for our denomination is a great resource. It used to be a far more powerful resource when there were literally thousands of pastors who had uploaded their resumes in there and just were waiting to get matched. Now our CLC system is used far less for that, and it's used more for looking at it as a job bank. And then they will apply as they see something that's there. And the interest for those job postings is more and more coming from social media posts. And so this is why being on social, making sure that you've got people on your PNC who are engaged in social media. The major platforms are Facebook and Instagram, but there's plenty of others as well. And making sure that you have those connections to be able to make those posts and have every one of those posts point back to that PNC page that Pastor Robin was talking about. You want a PNC page that has all of your information so that you have just quick posts that can then lead them to more information. Now, one of the questions that I've gotten a lot is, so do we just need to post once and we're done? No. You need to post every week for 3 months, and then you need to post twice a month for every month until you have a finalist. And people don't realize it. They'll post once or twice, and then they'll be like, oh, it was great, but then it's never doing anything for us. Social media is one of those things that if you don't catch it right when it comes out, you need to repost and repost. If you scroll on Facebook or Instagram, you see this. You'll see that things come up on your threads again and again. And after a few times, you're like, huh, now that's got my attention. That's why that's important. So make sure that you are posting regularly. In addition, there's one very specific group that you want to make sure is targeted for your Facebook messages. And that means you need to have somebody in your PNC or your interim pastor or somebody from the presbytery that's connected with the PCUSA Leaders Facebook page and the PCUSA Leaders Instagram groups. Those are the two groups that have the greatest number of PCUSA pastors in them. There are posts that come through regularly for job openings. Those posts are not just, hey, by the way, I got a church in my presbytery that has this opening. There's always something personal about it of, this is why you should take a look at this church. Those also point back to your PNC page. Word of mouth is huge, and for us, the greatest word of mouth does tend to be on social media. In addition to that, you need to consider doing print ads. Our denomination was renowned for getting advertising out for pastoral positions, and it was actually part of the PNC budgets up until about 10, 15 years ago. Many PNCs had an advertising budget. For some of those advertising budgets, what they used to do is they used to send letters to every single Presbyterian and then all of the large churches, letting people know about open positions. Now it's typically resourced through 2 or 3 specific platforms. The first is the Presbyterian Outlook. That's the one that has the most reach and the greatest number of subscribers to it that are involved in the PCUSA specifically. So Presbyterian Outlook should be absolutely a first stop for print ad. Again, you run a print ad for 3 months. Don't do anything less. Keep it in there for 3 months, then drop it for a little bit. If you need to, you can do it again. Throw it back in there. Presbyterians Today is also an option. It's an online-only platform, unlike the Outlook, which is print and online. Presbyterians Today doesn't have quite the reach that the Outlook does, but it still does get a number of people in the denomination, and it also gets a different demographic of people in the denomination. So targeting both of those is actually going to give you a pretty good spread. Now, one of the realities that we're dealing with in our denomination and many mainline denominations is that we don't have the plethora of available pastors that we used to. And so we're doing a lot of what we call cross-pollination, where we have many of our ecumenical partners that are coming in and taking calls. So we've had some Lutherans that have come and taken calls. We've got some Methodists and some Episcopalians. Those ecumenical partners, they don't subscribe to the Outlook. They don't subscribe to Presbyterians Today. The magazine that many of them do carry is the Christian Century. So that's the third one to be looking at if you want to reach outside of the denomination and look at potential ecumenical partners. Many of our mainline partners use the Christian Century as one of those resources. After social media, after your print ads, seminaries has already come up, and I cannot stress the importance of seminaries in those job posts, especially if you're looking for first-time job calls. And as Amy had mentioned, we have a lot of people that coming into ministry as a second call or a career change. They have all of this amazing experience and they're going back to seminary in midlife. And so, yes, they're coming out as a first time pastor, but they come with so much experience. But we also have some younger pastors that are coming out that have been doing work in other areas. And this isn't so much of a career change as it is they're just ready to now jump into the parish. I am seeing people coming out of seminary with far more experience and being much more church ready than ever. So please do not discount reaching out to your seminaries. You want a one-page job post that is very brief. It includes the mission and uniqueness about your church, a little bit of info about your town and your city. You need to highlight areas of diversity. Diversity is a huge piece that we forget about in our churches, and our pastors are looking for that. They're looking for where's diversity in your congregation? Where's diversity in the community that I might be moving to? Please make sure you take time to highlight diversity, because when you highlight diversity in your congregation or in your community, you are opening yourself up for more diverse pool of candidates being willing to consider your church. And that becomes a greater pool of applicants for you to look at. Then lastly, you want to close with some piece of hope for the future. What is it that you as a church are excited about for your future? That is the hook that then gets them to say, okay, I want to go further with them. I want to talk with them more. And then don't do it as a word post, I mean, all words. Make sure you get some photos in there. And whatever you do, do not put the photo of your church building on this job post. Nothing is more cold than a building. You want to see people, you want to see activities, you want to see life. That's what should always be showing. If they want to see a picture of the front of your church, they can get on Google Maps. Show them what the church family is about, not what the building is about. That helps communicate vision. Lastly, as you're getting these job posts together for seminaries, I want you to look beyond just our traditional seminaries. We like to go to Princeton. We like to go do a job post for Columbia. We like to do a job post for Austin. Those are the big three that we tend to go to. But we need to recognize that we have greater diversity in some of the seminaries that we have in our denomination. Johnson C. Smith, historically black seminary, great diverse population in that seminary. Please make sure you get it to them. Louisville has got a great diversity in their student population. Seminario Evangelical de Puerto Rico has a huge number of bilingual seminarians. They're studying in Puerto Rico, but they are just as good English speaking and Spanish speaking. If you've got a Latin community that you know you can be that you can reach, you may want to look at bringing in a bilingual pastor. Seminario Evangelical de Puerto Rico is a great resource for that. Go and do a job post for them. You want that greater pool of diversity. It's going to help in your application process and for the pastors that you're looking for. Lastly, larger churches, you may want to consider using a pastoral search consultant. And the reason for that is because the pool of applicants that have specifically large church experience has dwindled dramatically. So there's a significant strain on that particular population. And so one of the consultant groups that we recommend for larger churches doing searches is Vanderbloemen, and I put the link in the chat there. Vanderbloemen has been a great resource for a number of PCUSA churches around the nation. And I've got presbyteries all over that rant and rave about Vanderbloemen. The reason for it is because Vanderbloemen was actually established by PCUSA pastors. They tend to focus on mainline, and they have a much larger network of talent. and they have a much larger pool of applicants of matches with ecumenical partners. So if you're a larger church, please consider that as an additional resource. And then I think that was all that I had on my list to share, Amy. Is there anything that I'm missing or any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you highlight our full communion partners and like trying to get some of their ministers, or?
Great question. Yes, we have. So um, we have different ecumenical partners that we work with, and those ecumenical partners include the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, the Reformed Church in America, and the United Church of Christ. And those just posted in our chat. But we also have reciprocal agreements. One of the most beneficial reciprocal agreements we've had is with the Methodists as well. We have a large number of Methodists here on the West Coast as well as nationwide. Unfortunately, their denomination has been going through a schism. We know what that's like. We were going through that just over a decade ago. There are, as I've got some of my Methodist colleagues, they are calling themselves orphans, and they're looking for a place to land because they don't have a place in their own denomination. It is a great opportunity. The PCUSA is a great landing spot for them. So being able to, or being willing to look at some of these ecumenical partners is something that we should be highlighting. So great question, Sherry. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I want to thank you for your passion and your love for working with churches in transition. It comes across loudly and clearly. So thank you for that good information. And that was a lot. So if you need to go back and look at the video, I know that Sherry will post it. And you're going to put that link in a follow-up email. Is that correct, Sherry?
I am.
Perfect, thank you. And so now before we move into a time for comments and question and answer, I just have three things that I want to remind you of. One is Christine Long, who is with the Board of Pensions. She is indispensable when it comes to questions about compensation. And believe me, we had a lot of them. And she's knowledgeable, she's friendly. Sherry will put her contact information in that folder. Make use of her talents. And then I'm also to remind you that there is a pulpit supply group, a group email, and that will help you fill the pulpit during this time when you're in transition. So if you want to join that, send Sherry an email and she will put you on that list. And then finally, you will get a wrap-up email from Sherry. And these conversations are for you. So if there are other topics that you would like, let her know, and we can see that it happens. So we're at that time, we've arrived for any comments and or questions. And I've got to say that I'm looking down at Paul and that enormous cat he has. And Paul, I'll tell you that I know that you just finished with a transition time. If there's anything that you would like to say, please do. Otherwise, we'll open it up.
Well, as somebody who is looking for a call, I was 5 years in Kansas at my first call at a parish there, 3 churches. And when I sought my first call, I wasn't really thinking about the Midwest too much. I wanted to return back here to the Pacific Northwest. So when they called me, it was because I had my at that time they were called PIFs, my personal information form on the Church Leadership Connection, which I've been helping pioneer with their current search in Warrenton, and we've called the CLC kind of the dating site for churches and pastors. So and it is kind of like that. But that first church that called me in Kansas was through the CLC. Like I said, I would never have thought to go to Kansas, but I felt called there when I got the call from the church, and I said, really, God, I wanted the Pacific Northwest, but Kansas is not quite there. But ended up really being happy with the call. But then 5 years into the call, still had that whisper. It was starting to turn back into a shout to get back up here to the Pacific Northwest. And it was because I had a conversation with Clark that I knew to go to the Presbytery website. Otherwise, I quite frankly would not have thought about going there as a pastor. I was primarily looking through the Church Leadership Connection. But I'd worked in the secular world for quite a while, so networking was kind of a thing that I was used to trying to do to find a new technical writer job back in the day. So I feel very blessed to be here, though. I think Brian, what you shared about getting the calls out there to everywhere and anywhere is a great idea, and I do think the Church Leadership Connection should always be part of that too, though. Helping out with Pioneer, we've already got, they're not great matches, but they're matches nonetheless. We've got 7 matches that they're looking at right now that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. There is a comment that just popped up in the chat about ideas to help people be open to a variety of demographic groups. And I know that other people are monitoring this chat, but I do want to say that that is an excellent question, an important question. And I do believe that PNCs need to spend some time talking about personal bias and what they're looking for and what God wants for their church. They may be two very different things. And there are some wonderful books out there. Disunity in Christ is one of them. But I think that is an honest conversation that should occur within a PNC so that people are very aware of those biases and what they traditionally think of as as a pastor. So don't be afraid to have those conversations, please. And did you put something up there, a resource, Brian? Did I see that?
The resource was to Sharon's previous question. I had misreplied, and so I moved that reply to the correct spot. I don't have any resources to her second question as of yet, but Sharon is always asks the best questions, and that helps prompt great conversations. And you're exactly right. And this has been part of the work that CORE, which is our Committee on Representation, is beginning to have with our COMs and with PNCs now, is making sure that we have those conversations about diversity and demographics very early on in the PNC training. And that's going to become a critical part of our PNC work moving forward. And Sharon, thank you for your work in spearheading that with CORE and getting that into more of our churches.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. Thanks. It's critical. It's critical to who we are, right? As people of God, to be inclusive and to be inclusive. That's where I'm going to stop with that. Any other comments or questions?
Can we just chime in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Brian, you had mentioned various outside ministry partners. You mentioned the ELCA and the RCA and the UCC, and then there were others. I think you mentioned others, but I
Yes.
didn't catch.
So the specific other is the United Methodists.
United Methodists. Okay.
Yeah. So those are the ones that have that we've had a great local partnership with. That's not true everywhere in the nation, but here in the Pacific Northwest. And the ecumenical leaders between us and them, we have open conversations if we've got people that need to have a spot to land and say, hey, you got a spot in your denomination. And so that's been one that's worked very well. So, and if you end up getting some United Methodist applicants, especially if you're posting at the Christian Century, be willing to look at them. They're great, great scholarship, and their polity is going to be a little different, but they do a great job of learning our polity system and not trying to impose their own.
And you also said larger churches. What would you consider a larger church? Columbia Pres, is that a larger church?
Columbia Pres would be a larger church, basically multi-pastoral staff.
Okay, multi-pastor. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great question.
I am Becky Elmendorf. I'm in Bend, and we just finished a search and have a wonderful new associate pastor. I would put a plug in for the CLC. It was difficult for us to figure it out in the first place, but oh my goodness, we had applicants from all around the country. And a lot of people want to come to Oregon. A lot of people want to come to Bend. And so it was very successful. And I would say one of the tricks that our committee learned was I always would supply the questions that we had 24 hours exactly before we had an interview, either by Zoom or in person with each of our applicants. And that worked beautifully. It gave them just enough time to know exactly what we were going to ask about and to really focus on that and not get all over the place. I would also say that as people of God, I think it's really important that we let candidates who are not successful and that we talk to them in person and don't just email them or text them. I think that's one of the most important things we do because they have a lot they want to ask about, and I think that's a very important thing to do. So I liked the CLC once we got it under under control and understood it, and it was a great resource to us. Although we ended up hiring somebody that that our pastor Stephen Koski had known about and had left the country for a while and was willing to come back. So it was a networking that did it, but I got a chance to talk with candidates from all over the country who were very, very interested in our position and really upset they didn't get the job.
Yes, Becky, thank you for that comment. And I will say that calling someone who you declined to move forward is not easy.
Mhm.
And it always takes a few minutes to work up, what you're going to say beforehand. But I agree with you. It's very important. And then I love the idea about sending questions ahead of time. That definitely helps the interview process. I will also say that just a tidbit, maybe a pointer, and that is if you put the bios of everyone on your PNC page, it saves a tremendous amount of time. And that applicant doesn't now need to spend 20 minutes in introductions and learning about you individually, but put that up there and it helps you move along.
Yeah,
Much
good
more
idea.
quickly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
We have 7 minutes.
Hi, I'm Mary Tolliver with the Corvallis First Presbyterian Church. And we are in the midst of calling somebody. We think we found somebody. And we've gone through several great candidates. We had a lot in our search and had some disappointments. And the person that we called now, we were excited about, but now we hear that there's a possibility that he may be rethinking relocating because of a adult child that has had some health problems. So it's not a done deal that he's decided, to stay where he is, but how do you manage that disappointment? You get to know this person and they've come to a neutral pulpit with their spouse and everything just seems right, and that's really God telling you what you need, but then trying to manage the disappointment of, well, it's really not a done deal. And you may have to start your search all over.
Yeah, that happens, Mary, and I'm sorry that it's happening, to you, but that your attitude is everything. There are people out there still for your church, and you'll find the right one. But I'm also going to say something else that Robin told us repeatedly throughout this process. And what she said was, when you find someone you like, you move quickly. Because as she would tell us, there are more open positions than there are people. And so when you find someone, move quickly and don't keep them waiting in the wings in case somebody else comes along that you also like. Don't do that. Because you will likely lose. They're looking too, just like you are. And so even though Mary, for you, it's a different scenario, it's a whole different case. There is a lot of disappointment when someone says, wow, I'm not interested. Or someone says to you, I've heard a lot about Portland on the news, and I don't think that's for me right now. That happened to us. We liked, and it is very disappointing. And so you sit back, pray about it, and then move forward.
Okay. We're a young PNC. None of us have really gone through this before, and I feel like we kind of floundered at the first, and we had so many great candidates, and our first three picks, for one reason or another, didn't work out. And so, I wish we would have had this meeting with you guys before. So I appreciate all of this. And I hope that is there a way I can take this back? Is it going to be recorded and sent out to us so that, and the information we can, like the different people have been talking about, like Brian and let's see, and Robin have been talking about, is available for us to share also.
Yes, apparently there's a YouTube channel that I didn't know anything about, and this will be on YouTube. So
on YouTube, okay.
yes, you will get that link and that information from Sherry. And so we're reaching that 1 o'clock hour, and I know that some people are on a timeline, and this may be your lunch. And so I do want you to know that if you have to log out, please know that we're thankful that you came. And for those of you who want to stay, if you have additional questions, I can be here for a few more minutes, but definitely thank you for your time and for being here. I appreciate you, and thank you especially to Brian and to Robin.
Yeah. Mary, if you want to hang around for a minute, I might have a couple comments for you. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
And I'll just pop in real quick on that previous note about moving quickly, that Robin's advice. I know a couple of churches that once they found somebody they liked, ended up having 3 interviews in 2 weeks and scheduling a neutral pulpit within that immediately afterwards. These candidates, if you move quickly, they will respond. If you find someone you like, absolutely. And doesn't matter what your normal cycle is. Well, we don't have a meeting until next week. Schedule a special meeting. Just do it. Get your person.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Amy, for your part in helping lead this. This was wonderful.
Yeah,
And
good job, Amy.
Yeah, you did. You're awesome.
Well, thanks. I just found out that I was really going to do most of this yesterday, so I appreciate that much.
It looks like there are a couple of people hanging around. Maybe they're interested in what I might have to say to Mary. But Mary, I lost you on my screen. You didn't go away, did you?
No, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, sorry, I just lost you for a second on the screen. Gosh, I am so sorry. Especially, it sounds like you've had a few disappointments along the way. And I think what I want to say to you is, please don't lose heart. You know, I feel like it sounds like there still is a possibility of some chance that this individual may still pan out. But if
Yes.
not, I think what I would do, I want to underscore some things that Brian said. I would look at refreshing your process. You might take this as a time to go back and really reflect on several of the things we've shared today. You know, even the social media post idea, if you've not done that, no time like the present, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And, you know, I think Brian's advice is really spot on. I've seen more and more churches with successful searches utilizing social media, such as Facebook and Instagram, and the two groups that Brian suggested connecting up with, I think absolutely makes sense. So anyway, it wasn't sage wisdom, but I just wanted to say, don't lose heart. And if I can be of any help, give a holler. I'm happy to help you just think through how might you refresh your process a little bit.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And also, Mary, you made the comment about your PNC being young or inexperienced. I forget what you had mentioned, but you know, they all are, or they all should be, because otherwise we'd be turning over pastors left and right. So it isn't as if these people come in with a tremendous amount of experience anyway. So we're all starting from fresh, right? From when we start this process. And we end up with a lot of knowledge, but you're not alone. That's how it is.
Thank you all.
Okay, people are leaving now.
Unless you have.
Right. Thank you very much for your help.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Blessings to you all.
Thank you very much.
Amy, is there a way to get in contact with, say, Becky Elmendorf, who just finished an associate pastor search? I was looking on the website for the church and I see her name listed, but not contact information.
Yeah, there is. Just go ahead and send Sherry Elliott an email.
Yeah.
Presbytery, and she will definitely make connections for you.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care.
You too.
Bye.